Shalom, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. Today's message has been inspired by an email I got during the week, which I'll read out to you in a moment. And it formulated the inspiration behind the content that will follow in this teaching. And to be honest with you, something that has been on my mind for a while over the various months and years, even as I've observed certain things on the channel, looking at some of the statistics of viewings and various other metrics that content creators get to see, which are things that happen behind the scenes. And you can see your channel and how it is influenced by the various viewers. And I suppose all these things over the course of time have added up to build up an understanding of the situation as to how the channel grows and how the people interact on the channel and what type of people are interacting. And then when all these things come together, sometimes you don't necessarily do anything with them, but you lay them up in your heart and you know that they are there and you have that understanding and knowledge of the situation. So this email that I received brought me back to those memories, brought me back to those experiences. And then the Ruach started to minister to me and gave me the idea and understanding and inspiration to create this particular message or teaching. So let me read the email, a very short email from a individual who said to me, "Brother Daniel, I have been following you for close to a year and find your teachings sound and spirit led. If possible, I would love to join your live groups. I was awakened close to 4 years ago and am definitely still growing in the truth. I am from," and then the area that the individual's from. "Thanks so much," and the individual's name and also their YouTube handle. Obviously, I'm going to keep that confidential. And when I received this email, this individual has a unisex name, so a name that could be given to a man or a woman. And I automatically just assumed that it was a brother. And so I responded when I got the chance to respond, just thanking them for the edifying words and giving them some information about the channel and the prayer group that they could join and various things like that. And then eventually, the individual replied back to me and told me that they had filled in the questionnaire for the prayer group and also told me that they were actually a sister and not a man, although they understand why I assume that because the name can be given to men or women. And that was an interesting interaction because it was my initial assumption that they were a man, but it was also because I was pleased to be hearing from another brother in the faith. And that tells you that that is probably not a regular occurrence, that there are few brothers that tend to reach out to me, and the more people that reach out are women. And that is the formulation of how the channel is existing. At the moment, it's approximately over 2/3 of those who subscribe to the channel who are women, and 1/3 are men. This is according to the statistics that YouTube will produce. And in addition to that, it's over 70% of people that view the content that are women, and therefore under 30% of people that are men. And that means people who are subscribed and people who are not subscribed. So just people who are passing by, maybe they look at the channel, but they're not necessarily subscribed. So all of those things added together shows me that there are more women that are interested in the channel and its content than men. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it doesn't mean that there are not men out there that are looking at the channel. Maybe there are men out there that follow other channels and all these other things. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But what it tells me, and this is where the Ruach started to minister to me, is it tells me that women have an important role. And about a year and a half ago, I did a teaching based on women and their role in the Mishpachah. I will leave that in the linked description. And I went into some of these things during the course of that teaching. But I suppose now I want to add some more meat on the bone and especially focus on the roles that women are playing today, where it is a support to many ministries. And I speak from my own perspective, but I also follow other ministries. And sometimes when I go in the comments, I see a very similar theme to what I see on my own channel, where I see that it is more the women that are interacting, it is more the women that are doing administrational duties, it's more the women that are edifying each other and other people in the comment section, it's more the women that are doing things to support the channel, whether it be through prayer, whether it be through offering, whatever it might be. Women tend to be the more vocal and the more active people in the community. And again, these things I've seen across the board, but I'm specifically talking about my channel because those are the statistics that I have available and can see in great detail. And of course, apart from the statistics, I also just talk of personal interactions, that those that I tend to interact with more. And for example, those who wanted to join in the prayer group are predominantly women, and those who want to be part of any live streams or those kind of things, and those who've requested Zoom teachings, and those who've requested baptism, and all these things tend to generally be women. And those things can't be a coincidence. There must be something behind it. And these are things, as I said, I've laid up in my heart for a while, and I've started to understand the reason. And whilst all this was formulated in my head, the Ruach spoke to me and gave me the understanding and gave me the content to then come and teach on. And so I say all these things to say to the women that you play a very important role in general in the Mishpachah, but specifically on the things that are happening on this channel. And I want to just let you know that I genuinely appreciate you in whatever capacity you support. I genuinely appreciate you because it is apparent to me that without your support and without your influence and without your edification in whatever way that is, the channel wouldn't be what it is today. That is for sure. And so I just want to show you my appreciation, but more to the point and more specific to that, that the Ruach through me wants to show you the appreciation that the Most High has for you. And I want to make this teaching geared at the women, but also for the brothers to listen to, because we have a role to play in the support of our women in the Mishpachah. And what that is that as we are in these serious, perilous times that the scriptures talk about, there is one element that we are going to need more so than anything else to get us through. And that tends to be an element that women display more so than men. And the scriptures verify it. Now, as I started to receive the information from the Ruach HaKodesh, I started to think about Messiah. Of course, Messiah is the blueprint for us who believe, and he is the role model, therefore, as to how we can act. And I started to think about the relationship that Messiah had with various women. Very interesting relationships, and relationships that sometimes, if you don't delve deeper, you won't get the full understanding. And so I'm going to go through quite a few examples of things that Messiah had with women to see how he interacted. So, to all the sisters, to all the Akotis in the house of Yasharal, this podcast style recording is primarily for you, but the brothers should listen too. And the reason why I'm doing it as a podcast style recording is because I spent the last hour and a half almost recording a message as I normally do on camera. And for some reason, it didn't record, and I only found out at the end. And I wasn't discouraged because I know that the enemy will try to do his various schemes to discourage you and to detract from the message. And I believe it is a message from the Most High to the daughters of Zion. And so the enemy doesn't want it to go through, and he did what he does. But this is not going to stop the message, because although it's not going to be on camera now, but you will still have the podcast format. And who knows, some people may prefer that. You don't want to always be seeing my face, I'm sure. But listen very carefully for all those that are listening. To whomsoever wills, he that have an ear to hear, let him hear. As we begin to focus on the women in the Mishpachah, and you would have seen the introduction and to how the inspiration of this message came about. And so I want to use some examples in scripture where we see the relationship between Messiah and the ladies in the Mishpachah, those that he was around at his time, those that were in the nation of Yasharal and beyond. And this is important because it shows us that if the Mashiach, who is our blueprint, who is our example, a role model, had these type of relationships with the women, if we can understand what was the driving force behind those relationships, we will be able to know how in our time we can use those same driving forces that still exist, because as it was is as it will be. We can use them for the benefit of the Mishpachah, for the benefit of the nation. So let me show you some examples in scripture. And just as a heads up, I'm going to be using the Paleo-Hebrew name for Mashiach, which is Yahushai. To those who are new to the channel or maybe don't understand, we have Yahusha or Yahushua, depending on your pronunciation, which is the modern Hebrew name for Messiah. But I'm going to be using the Paleo-Hebrew name today, which is just on my heart to do. And so I'm being obedient unto that. I'm going to start in the book of John, chapter 2, where Messiah and his mother and the disciples are at a wedding. And dropping down to verse 3, it said, "And when they wanted wine, the mother of Yahushua said unto him, They have no wine. Yahushua said unto her, Woman, what have I to do with thee? My hour is not yet come. His mother saith unto the servant, Whatsoever he saith to you to do, do it." So you see that Messiah's mum made a request. Would he produce some wine? Would he bring some wine to pass from a miracle point of view? Now, his mother didn't ask him to do something that he probably hadn't already done. He probably had done this same thing at their home where he would have grown up, whether it be as a young child or even as a young adult, because she asked him knowing that he had the ability to do it. And when he said, "My hour is not yet come, what has this to do with me?" he was referring to that it wasn't his place at that time to reveal himself. It wasn't yet the time for his miracles to start, because he was also at a wedding as a guest, and the focus was supposed to be on those getting married. And so him being who he is took the back seat and said the hour is not yet come. But notice his mother doesn't turn to him and start debating or start questioning him why he won't do it. She turns to the servants and says to them, whatever he tells you to do, do it. And that is because she had faith that though it be out of season, though his time had not yet come, though that it had nothing to do with him per se and nothing to do with her, but because he was able, she knew that he would be willing. And she then told the servants to follow his every command. And you see that they ended up drawing out wine from 6 huge pitchers of water. And when the wine was tasted by the host said, usually we bring the best wine at the beginning, and then when everyone has drunk, the wine that is left over, which is not the best, comes at the end. But you have done it in reverse. You brought the worst wine at the beginning, and now you're giving us the best wine. And that was a symbolization of what HaMashiach came to do in the spiritual. It was a symbolization that in the beginning was the blood sacrifices of animals, and that blood was the representation of the wine. It's the spiritual element of the wine. That's what the wine stood for. But after these animal sacrifices had been done for ages, at the end of it all, HaMashiach gave up his life through his death, burial, and resurrection, and shedded the ultimate blood that replaced these animal sacrifices. And so just as he did with the wine, that he saved the best to last, it's the same thing in the spiritual. He saved the best to last after his death, burial, and resurrection by shedding his blood for his people and those that will cleave on. And so you see here, his mother had believed in his ability to do this thing. She knew by faith that he would do this thing. And so he did. And therefore, we can see that the faith formed the relationship between him and his mother, that despite him saying it wasn't his time, she knew that he would do as he said that he would do, which was to be obedient to his father and his mother, following the 5th commandment. So an element of faith was displayed here by Miriam. And then we move on to the book of Matthew, chapter 15, where we see a similar example but in a different context. We see that it is a Canaanite woman who comes to Messiah seeking deliverance. Starting in verse 22, and behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O master, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. But he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, Send her away, for she crieth after us. But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Yasharal. Then came she and worshipped him, saying, Master, help me. But he answered and said, It is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to dogs. And she said, Truth, master, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from their master's table. And when Yahushua answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. So you see Yahushua's willingness to cooperate with the woman after she persisted, after she stayed in that place, and that she wouldn't have no for an answer, and that she worshipped him and begged him to help her and to help her daughter who was sick. And Messiah told her, he said, look, it's not right to take the bread from the children and cast it to dogs. He told her he was only sent to the lost sheep of Yasharal. This woman was a Canaanite woman, but yet she stayed in her place of seeking his face and said, it is true, master, that the children should not have their bread taken, but however, even the crumbs off their table will we eat. In other words, I'm willing to take whatever you have to offer, even the smallest thing that you have. It is good enough for me. I'm going to stay here. I need your help. She was not taking no for an answer, ultimately displaying her faith in him. And it was this faith that moved him to give her exactly what she asked for and deliver her daughter from this sickness. And so we see two examples of women who had faith in Messiah, unwavering faith, that they persisted until they got what they wanted. And when we move forward to the book of John chapter 4, which is the woman by the well in Samaria. And this woman, I will start from verse 7, where it says, There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. And Yahushua said unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away in the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou being a Jew askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Yahudim have no dealings with the Samaritans. Yahushua answered and said to her, If thou knewest the gift of Elohim, and who it was that said this unto thee, Give me to drink, thou would have asked of him, and he would have given thee the living water. And so we see this dialogue that continues with them. And to save time, I'm going to drop down to verse 16, where Yahushua says unto her, Go and call thy husband and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yahushua said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands, and he who thou now hast is not thy husband. In that saidest thou truly. So we see Yahushua here breaking down to her what her past was and what her present is. And this woman was surprised that he knew this information, having never met her before. And consider she was a Samaritan, a woman from Samaria who was already rejected. They called those type of people half-breeds. That was their terminology, because they wouldn't accept that they were from Yasharal, because they were mixed. And so they were looked down on. On top of that, the woman had 5 husbands. We don't know if these husbands were remarriages because of death or because of divorce. We don't know the reason. But she had 5 husbands according to Yahushua. And she had a husband that she was with that wasn't classed as a husband. In other words, a 6th man. So this woman really would have been despised and rejected by all of those around. Yet Yahushua was asking for her drink, asking for her for a drink. And he goes on to continue this dialogue with the woman, where When it gets down to verse 24, Elohim is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in Ruach and Amat, or spirit and truth. And the woman said unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Hamashiach. When he come, he will tell us all things. And Yahushua said unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. And so this woman received this information directly from Messiah's mouth, that he spoke verbatim to her and said, the one you are seeking, I am him. He confessed himself to be Mashiach. And this was the first person, not just woman, the first person that he confessed out of his very mouth who he was. And why was it delivered to this woman? Because she had faith. So when she heard this, you see in verse 28 that she left her water pot there and went her way into the city and said to the men, come and see a man which told me all things that I ever did. Is not this the Mashiach? And they went out of the city because of hearing this, all the men and the other people that were around, and they came to Messiah. And when they came to Messiah, he has various dialogues and things that's going on. I'm dropping down to verse 39. It says, and many of the Samaritans of the city believed on him for the saying of the woman, which testified, he told me all that I ever did. So when the Samaritans were come to him, they besought that he would tarry with them, and he abode there for 2 days. And many more believed because of his own words, and said unto the woman, now we believe, not because of thy saying, for we have heard him ourselves, and know that he indeed is the Mashiach, the Saviour of the world. And so on the basis of this woman's faith, who went and called all she could find to tell them to come and listen to Mashiach, because he is the Mashiach, he is the truth, they came on the basis of her. And in the end, after hearing his words, they say, now we believe in you, that you are the Mashiach, not because of the woman's testimony, but because we've heard you ourselves with our very ears. And what Messiah did here is he used the faith of a woman to attract all these other followers, because she went out and proclaimed his name. She had that boldness and that confidence. And even though she was a woman that, as I said, would have been rejected in their society, she was still willing to go and call and tell as many people as she could that she had met the Messiah. And so again, we see another element of faith, that when Messiah reveals himself to one, especially when it's a woman that is seeking after Yah, she is going to then have this faith in him that is going to produce results. And this is the theme throughout all his interaction in the scriptures when it comes to women who are seeking the Most High. Let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 9. Just a couple of verses we're going to read here, where we find the first individual, again, not just a woman, but the first person in general that encountered Messiah and took from him without asking. This woman didn't wait to be offered. She didn't ask, can she have? She took from him without asking. Let's read it. Verse 20, and behold, a woman which was diseased with an issue of blood 12 years came behind him, and she touched the hem of his garment. For she said within herself, if I may touch his garment, I will be whole. But Yahushua turned about him, and when he saw her, he said, daughter, be of good comfort, thy faith has made thee whole. And that woman was made whole from that hour. Now, in this account in Matthew, it only covers the very brief encounter with Messiah. But if we look at the other account, I believe it's in the book of Mark, just paraphrasing, that this woman believed that if she touched the hem of his garment, she would be healed. She had this issue of blood for 12 years. And no doubt she had tried various physicians. She had tried various ointments. She had tried various herbs. She had tried various different things that people say will help you to get rid of this situation or this thing that she had, whatever it was. And nothing worked for 12 years. But yet, when she saw Mashiach, she had enough faith to believe that if I touch him, I don't even need to touch his body. I just need to touch his garment. I will be healed. And so she pressed through that crowd. She found a way to touch him. And when she touched him, the account, I believe it is in Mark, says that he felt virtue go out of him. He felt power go out of him. And he turned around and said, who touched me? And his disciples said, How can you ask that? There's so many people around. Anyone could have touched you. But Messiah continued to look, and the woman realized that he knew she had been healed. So she came forward trembling and said what had happened. And when he heard that, he said, "Daughter, be of good comfort. Thy faith has made thee whole." So again, it was the faith of this woman that she placed in him, faith above many things that we have seen in the scriptures, because she didn't wait for healing. She didn't wait for him to approach her and say, right, who needs healing? And likewise, she didn't cry out and say, Master, can you heal me? She just believed that if she touched that hem, she would receive. And so it was. She did receive. And he told her that it is her faith that has made her whole. And this is the thing that women have in their ruach, that the Most High has given you, that you have a faith, and that faith can lead you to many things, like edifying in the body, like caring for the mishpachah, like giving people comfort, like giving people your time and your resources, and like giving people your help in terms of administration. And by seeking the Most High, by wanting to be part of various groups, by wanting to fellowship with one another, by wanting to do all the things that bring you closer to the Most High, by wanting to learn, by wanting to have understanding, all of these things are in the element of faith that you have. And that is why Mashiach has had different relationships with women, but the underlying factor of these relationships was always their faith, because that is just the purity of faith that you have. And so moving on to even another example, let's go to the book of Lucas chapter 7. And in the book of Lucas chapter 7, we're going to be introduced to a character by the name of Miriam. I'll start at verse 36. Miriam was somebody who was at the house of one of the Pharisees who had invited Messiah for dinner. And it says, and one of the Pharisees desired him that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house and sat down to meat. And behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, when she knew Yahushua was at meat in the Pharisee's house, bought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him, weeping, and began to wash his feet with her tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee which had bidden him saw it, he spake within himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that touches him, because she is a sinner. Then Yahushua answering said unto him, Simon, I have something which to say unto thee. And he said, Say on, master. There was a certain creditor which had two debtors. The one owed 500 denarii and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me therefore, which of them will love him most? And Simeon answered and said, I suppose that he to whom he forgave most. And he said unto him, Thou hast rightly judged. And he turned to the woman and said unto Simeon, Seest thou this woman? I entered into thy house. Thou gave me no water for my feet, but she has washed my feet with tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. Thou gave me no kiss, but this woman, since I have come into this house, has not stopped ceasing to kiss my feet. My head with oil did thou not anoint, but this woman has anointed my feet with ointment. Wherefore I say unto you, that her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. And he said unto her, Thy sins are forgiven. And when they that sat at meat with him began to say within themselves, Who is this that forgiveth sins also? And he said to the woman, Thy faith has saved thee. Go in peace. So again, we see this theme of faith, that this woman who came crying because she needed deliverance, she needed to have an encounter with the Most High Son that has the power to forgive sins. She needed his mercy because it was said that she was a sinner. And Messiah himself said, this woman whose sins are many, acknowledging that this woman had many sins. Yet despite all of those things, despite how she was seen by others, he had compassion on her because of her faith, because she stayed in that place at his feet, ministering to him. And through that ministering to him, it brought about a change in her, and it brought about deliverance from him through the forgiving of sins because of her faith, because she believed in him and she knew that he was the solution to all her problems. And so we see this continual theme of women having faith win Messiah. And even when those women are rejected by society, Messiah still has time for them. And he has time for them because of the faith they place in him. And that faith comes from the Father. That faith comes from, as it says in Romans 10:17, that when you hear the word of Yah, you gain faith. That faith comes by hearing, and hearing the word of Yah. And these are the things that these women had in common, that they had this faith because they wanted to hear the word of Yah. You see, the woman that was in Samaria, she said that she is waiting for Mashiach. She said, I know Mashiach will come, and when he comes, he will teach us all things. Meaning she was reading the scriptures and she knew the prophecies, and she had an interest and she had a desire. She had a want to hear from the master. She had a want to connect to Yah. And so when the Son of Man came, he came to minister to all their needs. And even the ones like the woman that was from Canaan, that was not supposed to receive because she was not from Yasharal, and he was sent only to the lost sheep of Yasharal. Yet she still received her blessing because of her persistence and because of her faith. All these examples, all these people that are receiving, all these women that he's having these relationships with are receiving from him because of their faith. Now, when we flip over to chapter 8 of the same book in Lucas, we see some information at the beginning where it says, and it came to pass afterwards that he went throughout every city and village, preaching and showing the glad tidings of the kingdom of Elohim. And the 12 were with him, and certain women which had been healed of the spirits and infirmities, Miriam called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils, and Joanna, the wife of Cuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others which ministered unto him of their substance. So this woman who was named Mary Magdalene, and if we don't read the passage carefully, we can think it's only talking about her. But it says certain women, plural, which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities. So many of these women had various affliction, various demonic oppression, various demonic possession. And Miriam was one of them that had 7 devils cast out of her by Mashiach, and Joanna, and Susanna, and many others that ministered unto him of their substance. And again, this goes back to the faith they had in him, in his ability to deliver. And then they ministered unto him, unto his ministry, with their substance in whatever way they were able to help, whether it was with financial, whether it was with prayer, whether it was with serving, and keeping them sustained through food and through looking after them. They did what it took because they had faith in him and they believed in him, and ultimately they were seeking Yah. Many of them which had pasts, many of them which had issues, many of them which had demonic oppression and possession. Yet when the master came and cast them out, they were in the truth, and all they wanted to do was seek his face and help in any way that they can. And as I say, there is a parallel in today's society. What has been is what shall be. It is nothing new under the sun to see that it's the women today that are the ones that are supporting ministries in the various ways that they can. And they're the ones edifying in the various ways that they can. And they're the ones that are praying and uplifting people and are interceding with their prayers. And they have powerful prayers because of the faith that they have. They're the ones that are seeking the Most High. They are seeking to learn more. They are seeking to understand. They're seeking to fellowship. They're seeking to do all these things. And that is because of the faith that is inside of them. When they have a relationship with Yah, he gives them that measure of faith. And ultimately, they then expound on it. And what I'm saying by all of this is that whilst it may sometimes come across that you are not appreciated, or that you are not reverenced because of some of the scriptures, or that some of the camps that are out there that are twisting or manipulating the scriptures and coming up with various things to underplay women and their roles in the mishpachah, I tell you that those things not be true, that you are appreciated, you are loved. The Father has a special place for you in terms of his relationship and his roles for you in the Mishpachah. Some of those that we will look at towards the end of the teaching or the end of the message or the end of the podcast, however you want to put it. But just know that you are appreciated and loved by the Most High. And on a small level, you are also appreciated and loved by me, because I see the things that you're doing and helping me in this particular ministry. And I also see the things that you're doing in other ministries that I may follow and see online, and see these same people that are helping and supporting and wanting to edify the community with their words, with their offerings, with their prayers, with whatever it is that they are able to offer. And so you must continue to do these things and not lose heart, not be disheartened. Continue to understand that these things, by seeking out the Most High, will increase your faith. Continue to be faithful to hear the word of Yah, which will bring more faith. And the more faith you have, the more ability you will have in your prayer and your ability to even prophesy. So keep going. Don't be distracted, or don't be downcast, because I know many women may be alone, or they may be in families where their family doesn't believe, their spouse may not believe, or maybe they're elderly women that are isolated, or maybe they're single women that are on their own. Whatever it might be, your value to the Mishpachah should not be understated or underestimated. And the Most High sees you. He sees those that are seeking him, and he definitely loves you and appreciates you, because these were the things that the Ruach was downloading into me, not just over the course of the last week when this message was being prepared, but over a longer period of time, when it was showing me various things, that it is the women that are the ones who are the majority in the various chat rooms, or in the various comment section, in the various administration, by helping in the various places of giving offerings, or whatever it is that they're doing, their prayers, all of those things. It's generally the women we see much more. And I gave you the statistics of the channel at the beginning. But I believe that that is the case across the board in many ministries, that the women are playing their roles. And that's what we must do. We must play the roles that we are given. As the scripture always goes on to tell us, it is better to serve than be served. It is better to give than receive, because that is where the higher blessing is. Again, looking at things like the selfless prayer, it is the women that want to be involved in those prayer groups. And I'm not saying that there are not men out there that are doing these things or that want to do things, but it seems like the women are more active. They're the ones that are speaking up. They're the ones that are putting up their hands. And like I said, if I can see that, how much more can your Heavenly Father see that and know that? And therefore, this message is being composed by the Ruach HaKodesh, by the influence of the Ruach, to give you this message of encouragement and edification. And so, continuing on, we see that there was a group of women that had all had demons and various things cast out of them, and their infirmities made whole. And they were the ones ministering to Yahushua and his ministry through their substance and their various ways of serving the master and his disciples. And so this is a common theme as to why we see that Yahushua had these relationships with the women, is because of their faith. Now, when we flip over a couple of verses to Lucas chapter 10, a couple of chapters even, we see that this was the occasion where these two sisters that we're introduced to, who are called Martha and Miriam. And if we go to the verse 38, we see that it reads, "Now it came to pass as they went that he entered into a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha received him into her house. And she had a sister called Miriam, which also sat at Yahushua's feet, and heard his word. But Martha was cumbered about much serving, and came to him and said, Master, dost thou not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Bid her therefore that she help me. And Yahushua answered and said unto her, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Miriam has chosen that good part, which shall not be taken away from her. So Miriam went and planted herself at the master's feet to listen, to cleave, to understand, to perceive, to accept every word that he spoke. She was keen to learn. She put herself in his presence and she said, I'm not moving from here. I'm staying here because I know that this man has the words of truth and life. And these same words were words that no doubt had delivered her previously. If we connect the dots and see that this is the same Miriam that was in the place of the Pharisee's house when she was crying at his feet, it is likely the same Miriam of Magdalene. Could be a separate one, but is likely the same one of whom he cast out 7 demons from. And we're going to see that when we get to the next example, the example refers back to when this woman was crying at his feet. So we therefore know it is the same woman, i.e. the same sister of Martha. And we're going on to see now that she's also related as a sister to Lazarus, which is in the next example that we're going to. But notice Messiah here told his follower Martha that she is troubled and careful and worrying about many things. But he said, despite doing that, only one thing is needed. And Miriam has chosen that thing, and it shall not be taken away from her. She had identified that the priority has to be hearing from the master. And it's not to say that looking after the people, including the master's own physical needs in terms of food and serving them and all of those things that they were going to be doing, it's not to say that that wasn't important. But the more important thing was to hear the words of life, the words that have the power to transform, the words that have the power to make a change in your life. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're isolated or lonely, these are the words that can give you comfort to your soul. And Miriam very well knew that. And that's why she stayed at Messiah's feet and received from him the blessing to say that that thing, i.e. the word that she was hearing, would not be taken away from her. So let's go now to this situation with Lazarus in the book of Yochanan, chapter 11. And here we will see these 2 characters again, Martha and Miriam. I'll start in verse 1. Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Miriam and her sister Martha. It was that Miriam which had anointed Mashiach with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair. So it's confirming here that this Miriam we see here, the sister of Martha, was the same Miriam that had anointed his feet and wiped it with her hair and the tears. And so we can see that the brother Lazarus was sick. And we know the story that Messiah waited a certain amount of time and eventually went there. And by the time he got there, Lazarus had been asleep, as he put it, for 4 days. He was dead, that he plainly told his disciples, and that he is going now to raise him up. And so when Messiah gets to this place, I'll start in verse 20. Martha heard that he was coming, and then she went out to meet him. But Miriam sat still in the house. Then said Martha unto Yahushua, Master, if thou had been here, my brother had not died. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou ask of Elohim, Elohim will give it to thee. So she made the statement that if he was there, she knows that he would have been able to save Lazarus, healed him from this sickness, and he wouldn't have died. But despite that, she said, but I know now that even at this moment, that if you ask Elohim for something, he will certainly give it to you, indicating that she had faith, she had belief, even though he hadn't said a word, that she could receive from him the resurrection of life to her brother. She believed that. It was a faith that she had. Whilst everyone else was mourning, she knew who this individual was standing in front of her, the Son of Man. She knew that it was the Son of the living Elohim, and she knew that she could receive from him. And so he goes on to say to her in verse 23 that
thy brother will rise again. And Martha said unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. So she's talking about the next dispensation at the end when the dead are judged. She knows that he's going to be resurrected. But Yahushua said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life, and he that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? And she said unto him, Yea, Master, I believe that thou art the Messiah, the son of Elohim, which should come into the world. And when she said so, she went her way and called Miriam, her sister, secretly, saying, The Master is come and calleth for thee. So again, we see this blind faith of Martha. She believed without any shadow of a doubt. She went to call her sister. And when her sister came, starting in verse 32, to where Yahushua was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Master, if thou had been here, my brother would not have died. The same thing that her sister said. When Yahushua therefore saw her weeping, and the Yahudin also weeping, which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, Where have ye laid him? And they said unto him, Master, come and see. And then it says in Yochanan chapter 11, verse 35, that Yahushua wept. The shortest verse in the Bible, and the first time we see that it indicates that he cried with tears. And this was because of what it says in verse 33, where it says, when Yahushua therefore saw her weeping, talking of Miriam and the Yehudin that also were weeping, that came with her, he was troubled and groaned in the spirit, and it eventually brought him to tears because he saw somebody that he loved, Miriam. This was the same Miriam that they had called a sinner. This is the same Miriam that wiped his feet, that the men were saying that in their heads, Simeon, that if Messiah knew what type of woman he was, he would not let her touch him because she is a sinner. Yet he shed tears for her grief. And that shows you how the faith in him can move him to do a lot. That he loved this woman, he loved the sister Martha, and he loved the brother Lazarus. They came from a family of good stock. And though when he met this woman, this same Miriam, she was doing all sorts of things that she shouldn't, all sorts of things that labeled her a sinner, all sorts of things that got her to have these seven demons that had to be casted out. She knew that if she could just get from Messiah, if she could just get ministering, she would be delivered. And so he loved her for her faith in him. And then we see that after this grieving, that Messiah who wept for the first time we see in the scriptures, notice he didn't weep when he was fasting for 40 days and 40 nights and being oppressed by Hasatan. Notice he didn't weep when he was led out to that tree and was crucified after being tortured and beaten and spat upon and treated like how they wanted him, and being mocked and ridiculed and reviled whilst he hung on that tree in the hot sun, butt naked. And trust me, you see these images of him on the cross in churchianity and Christianity with this little rag tied around his waist. I tell you, he was butt naked. He had nothing on him. They shamed him as much as they can. And you know how I know this? Because when Adam was created, he was naked and not ashamed. And Messiah, as the second Adam, had to replicate that same thing, that he had to be naked because he was rejected and reviled. But yet, when he ascended, after he resurrected, he was the most glorified of all. And so I know that there was a parallel from what happened to the first Adam, that once he had sinned and he saw he was naked, he became ashamed. That what happened to the second Adam, that when they put him to death, they put him naked on that tree. I have no doubt from that. That's personal revelation, but verified in the scriptures when you line upon line it, precept upon precept. Yet in all of those afflictions and humiliations, he shed no tears. He shed no tears for himself. He was literally being subjected to all these things. And even in his affliction, spiritual affliction by Hasatan, when he tried to make him think that Elohim had rejected him, he shed no tears for himself. But yet his love for Miriam, when he saw her in grief, that's the time we see that he shed tears. And that shows you the great love he had for her and her sister and the brother Lazarus that was dead. And then we know the rest of the story. He goes on to raise Lazarus from the dead, and then he is celebrated because of these things that he did, and many people believed on him. And they believed on him because of the miracles that they saw, but the miracles happened because of Miriam and Martha's relationship with him, that he was moved to do something to help them. And so their faith allowed many people to be there who came to witness and to support them in mourning. They ended up witnessing a miracle and believing in Messiah. And so we continually see these evidence of faith that Yahushua seemed to bring out of these women. These women all had this faith in him, and it was amazing to see that the Messiah had all these relationships with women that sometimes were not even esteemed by others. And in society in that time, the women were certainly behind the scenes. A lot of the time they wouldn't even take a testimony if it came from a woman, that the women were not reverenced, and they were not appreciated in the way that they should be. And Mashiach came and he changed all that, and he showed them that those that believe in him, that he would have a special relationship with them, in a sense where their faith would be able to convince others, or at least draw others unto Yahushua until they could receive him themselves. But it always started with the women in most of these cases because of the fact that they had this blind faith. And this same Mary of Magdalene that he cast out 7 demons from, that he had crying at his feet with her tears, that he showed her that he resurrected Lazarus, her brother, assuming it's the same one. The scriptures tend to verify that. And even if it was a different one, then even better, because there's more people with the same testimony. But I believe it's the same one that was all in these various accounts. And we know that he then showed her another miracle, another confirmation, and she was the first one to witness it. And we find that in Yochanan chapter 20, where it says, "The first day of the week cometh, and Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, went unto the sepulchre to see the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she ran and cometh unto Simeon Peter, and said to the other disciple whom Yahushua loved, and said to them, They have taken away the master out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him. Peter therefore went forth, and that other disciples, and came to the sepulchre. So they ran both together, and the other disciple did outrun Peter," that's John, "and he came to the sepulchre. And stooping down and looking in, he saw the linen lying, yet he went not in. Then cometh Simeon Peter, following him, and went into the sepulchre, and seeth the linen clothing lie, and the napkin that was about his head not lying with the linen cloth, but wrapped together in a place by itself. Then went in also the other disciple which came first, that was Yochanan, to the sepulchre, and he saw, and he believed. For as yet they knew not the scripture, that he must rise from the dead." And so these disciples saw what they saw. They saw the clothing. They didn't see the body of Messiah. They wondered what had happened. And it says that Yochanan believed. Doesn't say what he believed, but he believed. And also they didn't know the scriptures that Mashiach must rise again from the dead. But it says that he believed. Yet they haven't seen any sign of Messiah being raised. And eventually those disciples went away again unto their own home. But Miriam didn't go with them. She stood outside the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and saw 2 angels in white sitting, one at the head and the other at the feet. So these angels specifically hid themselves from the 2 male disciples of Yochanan and Peter. But yet, when they had gone and they were all alone with Miriam, they revealed themselves to her. And they said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said unto them, "Because they have taken away my master, and I know not where they have laid him." And when she had said this, she turned back herself and saw Yahushua standing, and knew not that it was Yahushua. Yahushua said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? And she, supposing him to be a gardener, said unto him, Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast taken him, and I will take him away. Yahushua said unto her, Miriam. She turned herself and said unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Then Yahushua said unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and unto my Elohim and your Elohim. Now notice what he said. He said to her, Go and tell my brethren that I am ascending to my Father and your Father, and my Elohim and your Elohim. But was his brethren not just with him? Were they not just in that same tomb? Yes, they were. But he didn't reveal himself to them. He revealed himself first to Miriam, because he knew she would believe without any doubt. And he knew she would go and proclaim just as he had said. And she would tell the others. And that's exactly what she did. And many of them didn't believe. Many of them probably rebuked her. And eventually you see Yahushua reveal himself to the disciples, and they're in shock. And they have to have physical proof of him eating honeycomb and broiled fish to prove that he is not a ruach, and that he had flesh that they can handle and touch and see. And in another version, I think it's in the book of Marcus account, it says that he rebuked many of them for not believing and for being of hard heart. But yet Miriam was the one he revealed himself to first. Another first thing that he did. Many of the things that he did first were for the women, because of this faith that they had. And so this formulates the examples of the relationship many of the women had with Mashiach, because of their faith and because of them seeking him, seeking the Most High, seeking the things of Yah, that they wanted to have these things in their life, and Yahushua obliged. And we see, if we go into the book of Acts, just one verse in chapter 9, and I will read verse 36 for the sake of time. In the book of Acts, it says that now there was at Joppa a certain disciple named Tabitha, which by interpretation is called Dorcas. This woman was full of good works and alms deeds which she did. So here is another faithful woman, full of good works and doing alms and doing things to help the ministry. She was a disciple, meaning she was a follower of Mashiach. She was one who wanted to learn. She was one who wanted to be taught. And so this shows how she was seen. And this woman later on in that same chapter goes on to die. But when Kepha comes forward, he kneels down and prays for her, and she rises again. And we see that she was made alive because of the faith and the goodness in her. And so she was resurrected. And it goes on to say, and I'll read it in verse 42, and as was known throughout all of Joppa, and many believed in the master. And it came to pass that he tarried many days in Joppa with one Simeon a tanner, that speaking of Kepha, that stayed there after doing this miracle, raising her back to life. And through that miracle, many believed. So again, another woman that has faith, that was raised from the dead because of her good works and her good alms that she did. And many people that knew her because of the faith they had in her, when they saw this miracle, they believed in the power of the name of Yahushua, because it was that power that Kepha used to raise her from the dead. And I want to turn almost finally, as I begin to wrap up, to the second book of Timothy. And I want to read from the second chapter. And I want to read verse 1 to 5, where it reads, Shaul, an apostle of Yahushua HaMashiach, and the will of Elohim, according to the promise of life which is in Mashiach Yahushua. To Timothy, my dearly beloved son, grace, mercy, and peace from Elohim the Father and Hamashiach Yahushai our Master. I thank Elohim whom I serve from my forefathers with pure conscience, that without ceasing I have remembrance of thee in my prayers night and day, greatly desiring to see thee, being mindful of thy tears, that I may be filled with joy. When I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in thee, which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that is in thee also. So here Shaul is honoring Timothy in this letter, saying that he has this faith which he classes as unfeigned, meaning it is pure, meaning that it is genuine, it is sincere, it is wholesome. This faith that Shaul is talking about is a faith that he identifies that came from his grandmother Lois and was passed down to his mother Eunice, and that is why he is confident it is also in Timothy. So here it is showing that these women of great faith, when they came along and brought their children along and then brought their grandchildren along, this gift of faith passed down the generations. And it is amazing to see that these things are things that are gifts. Having faith like that is a gift. And this is the gift that is stirred up inside one to believe and then to go on and do greater things using this faith. And so these two women here, Lois and Eunice, were identified as having great faith. And that is why Timothy himself had great faith that was wholesome. And so again, we see more examples of the faith that is in women and the faith that can be used in the Mishpachah to serve and to edify and to help and to minister to others that need it. And that is why we see a direct parallel in today that we are seeing in many of these examples, that it is the women who want to be involved. And then I come on to my last scripture, which is in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11. I'm going to read just a couple of verses from verse 3. Let's get the order of hierarchy where it says, this is Apostle Shaul's writings, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Mashiach, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Mashiach is Elohim. Every man praying or prophesying having his head covered dishonours his head, but every woman that is prayeth or prophesying with her head uncovered dishonoureth her head, for that is even all one as if she were shaven. And so Shaul gives the order of things. He says first it's Elohim the Father, then it is the Son, Yahushai HaMashiach, and then it is the man, and then it is the woman. That is the order of hierarchy. And despite that order of hierarchy, he goes on to say that if the man is praying or prophesying, he should not cover his head. But when the woman is praying or prophesying, she should cover her head. And what I'm drawing at here is that the ability that the woman has through her faith should allow her to pray and prophesy, as long as she's following the order of things, i.e. covering her head to show she is in subjection to the man. And the man should not cover his head. This is talking about when he's prophesying and praying. I'm not talking about other areas, specifically in those two areas. Prophesying and praying, that's where the instructions are. And so the order of hierarchy shows that the women have the ability to do these things, prophesy and pray according to the scriptures. And because of the great faith that you have, my sisters, you are able to do these things. You're able to edify the body through these means and these gifts that you are given, and this relationship that you have with the Most High when you are faithful and you're in him and you're seeking him. It is proven time and time again in these examples that Yahushua had a very special relationship with women that were seeking him, because he ministered to their needs, and those women stayed in that place until they got what they needed from the Messiah, until they got their deliverance or their healing, until they got their comfort. They stayed at his feet until they heard every word that he had to say. The ones that were faithful remained in that place. And so I encourage you all today to continue, those that are seeking the Most High, those that are seeking his Son, those that are seeking his righteousness, to continue in the way, those that have the faith to do the things to help support the ministry as I'm seeing you do across the board. Continue to do those things. Don't be disheartened that you may be on your own or isolated, or that you may be treated in certain ways from certain people in certain bodies of Mashiach, where they quite frankly don't understand the scriptures and they don't have a relationship with the Most High. And a time will come when the Most High will make things right and put all things in order. And a time will come where those who are oppressing and those who are teaching doctrines which is purely garbage, they will be judged. And the Most High will vindicate you, those that are seeking him, and he will elevate you, as it says, those that humble themselves will be exalted, but those who exalt themselves will be abased. The Most High will do these things in real time in front of our faces. Those things that are done in the dark will have to come to light. And I just want to encourage the sisters in the Mishpachah to carry on serving as best as you can. The Most High sees you and the Most High loves you. These are the things he was downloading into me. And as I say, it wasn't something that just happened over the course of the last week when I was preparing this teaching. It's happened over the last few years, that I've always wondered, why are there so many women that are the ones that are active, or the ones that are vocal, or the ones that are the ones seeking further teaching, seeking further, fellowship. And again, I'm not saying that the men don't do this, but the numbers don't lie. There is that saying that men lie, women lie, but the numbers don't. And I see the numbers on the channel. The numbers don't lie. It is proof that these things are happening. And when I go into the scriptures and look at the examples that I've shared with you, and there are many others, you see that when it comes to faith, women have a unmovable faith. And if you tap into that, then you can develop your relationship with the Most High. And the more you seek him, the more he reveals himself to you. So this is just an encouragement to know that I appreciate you, those who are helping me within the ministry, those who are edifying me in your various ways. I appreciate you and I genuinely love you. And I know that the Most High was using me as a vessel to give you this information, that it is coming from his throne of grace, that he feels about you a certain way of great feeling, a certain way of love. And he has put that faith inside of you. And those of you that are using that to respond and to serve the Mishpachah, he is pleased with the way that you are displaying that faith. And I'm talking about things that are in line with scripture. I'm not talking about things outside scripture. It has to be in line with what is written. But however it is that you are edifying, continue to do those things. He that endureth to the end is the same that will be saved. The Most High sees your efforts. And I go even into my personal life. I know when I look at my upbringing, my mother was the one that had faith. My father didn't really have faith. It was from my mother. She was the one that from a very young child would teach me various things. And she didn't have all the information and she didn't have all the knowledge. But what she knew was that a creator existed, and she was showing me it's very important from a young age to have faith in your creator. And when I asked my mom, where did you get your faith? How did you come to believe? She said she didn't know, but just as a child, she always knew that her creator existed and that he loved her. And so that was what got her through many moments in her life. And likewise myself, that when I came to this understanding, is what got me through many difficult moments in my life. But it is no doubt that women have a faith that is more common to women than it is to men. Men, we have our own gifts, we have our own abilities that is more prevalent than what women have. And the scripture tells us that the women are the weaker vessel. So we know that we have our own abilities, but when it comes to faith, women have that in abundance. And this is something that is going to be needed in these times that we're in these last days, when all the stuff is going to hit the fan. And if you don't have faith, you're going to be found wanting. And many of the women are going to step up in terms of edifying and praying for people and encouraging people to stay faithful and encouraging people to seek out the Most High. Many women will be doing these things within their families and within the community at a local level and maybe even at a bigger ministry level in terms of how they support the ministry through their prayers and through prophesying, staying in their lane, staying in order of things that it was ordained in the scriptures. And as I see these things happening in front of my very eyes, I appreciate all the women and are very much grateful and thankful for those that the Most High has put in the ministry, that want to help, that want to serve, that want to join, that want to participate, that want to edify, that want to pray, that want to do all these things in the ways that they are able and led. It is appreciated. And to the brothers, the message is also to encourage the women. Encourage them knowing that they are the weaker vessel. Encourage them, edify them to continue and to support. And to the men out there who maybe are not as active, then you need to step up. You need to seek out the Most High and to see where He would have you be, what role He would have you in, because we need the men also. Everybody has their role. When we play our roles together and combine it, we are a great force. But we need one another to do these things. It can't just be the women stepping up, or it can't just be the men stepping up. It has to be both playing their roles, and then we will see how things will progress. And when it comes to fellowship, and when it comes to edification, when it comes to prayer, I believe the women have this natural gift of faith that facilitates these things. Because time and time and time again, when I look on the channel, I see the people that seem to be reaching out, the people that seem to be seeking teaching, seeking prayer, seeking baptism, seeking all these things are generally coming from the women. And so I appeal to you, sisters, to be encouraged, be of good cheer. The Most High sees what you're doing and He sees your heart. And when you are for Him and you have that yearning for Him, He will supply your every need. And to the brothers, I encourage you to step up where it is needed and encourage the women around you, especially the women that are seeking Yah. Encourage them, don't discourage them, because we need them just like they need us. And if we put our trust in Yah, we will see many things come to pass in our favor. This is the time of our redemption. These are the hours and these are the times we're in. This is the redemption of Yasharal. But we need everybody to play their role so we can be successful. So I thank you for listening. I know it was a different type of teaching or message. As I explained at the beginning, the original video got lost and I was unable to record a video again. But listening back, probably as I'm hearing myself speak, this one may have come out better than the original video. So everything serves its purpose. But for now, I will leave it here. Please do like and share and subscribe as you are led, and continue, those who are in the faith seeking Yah, continue to do those things because it doesn't go unnoticed. May the Most High bless you and keep you. May He cause His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May He lift His countenance upon you, and may He give you shalom. Shalom, brothers and sisters.